Check WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. It says so right here on the cover. We're calm, we're local, but this is going to get a little out of market. We've done a whole lot of non-sports related conversation the last 100 days or thereabouts. The last time I left this guy, we were talking about the Astros cheating. We were talking about the untimely, unfortunate, tragic death of Neil Peart and rock and roll. Maury Brown, when I left you, I had tickets for 4 Pearl Jam shows, 2 in Oakland back-to-back, 4 Rolling Stones show on the Lucky Dip. I was going to sit in the pick with Mick in San Diego, but none of that was going to happen. And, I don't get out to see Shoot the Thrill, but I do have the thrill of reading your work on Forbes about baseball, and it looks like they're going to try to play baseball in a couple of weeks. My dude in the mask in Portland, Oregon, our lives, they've changed so much in the last 4 months. Man, how you doing? You still rock and rolling? You still playing some AC/DC on the side or no?
No. So here, speaking of concerts, I went to the last large concert event in the entire country.
Wow.
I saw Tool. I saw Tool in March. The next day they canceled the tour. The NBA canceled the season.
Wow.
That was the night that Mark Cuban was sitting there. He got the news on his phone, and he went, wow. And I was watching it on. I was standing around the bar, and everybody was a little nervous at the time, but there was sold out, 22,000 people. And after that, the concerts all stopped and everything there. So, no, it's a lot of woodshedding at home, playing a lot of I haven't played a bunch of lead in a while because, I'm doing the Malcolm Young thing. So I'm having a good time doing that.
You working on your dexterity? Is that what you're doing?
Working on that and playing more than 2 guitars. So I'm playing a lot of my Gibson Firebird and my Les Paul, and, I'm happy. So, yeah, that's what's been going on. That and a lot of baseball, as you mentioned, Nestor.
If you weren't in an AC/DC band, what kind of band would you be in?
It would be something more like the Melvins or something like that, really heavy alternative stuff. I really dig that kind of music. So it would be something like that or Helmet. Okay. I'm really into stuff, the stuff that I really love to play and the music that I'm really in deep inside. Like I love the classic rock stuff. I will never walk away from that. But deep inside, the real thing I like is a lot more aggressive and a lot more alternative-based.
The next thing that came along after you fell in love with ACD. Hey, listen, I got challenged back in April. I started getting challenged in January to do the 10-album thing on Facebook, right? So Dave Geller gets a hold of me, and I don't know what got into me that he pitchforked me in the way that he did. But he pitchforked me the last week of April. And, I was considering this mayoral run, and I was deep into writing about policy and crime and children and the community and racism and all these things, And we're doing all this Baltimore Positive stuff. And I said to my wife, I said, you know what? It will do me good to write this once and for all, because I get asked, Maury, how many times in your life have you been asked, hey, Maury, if you were trapped on an island with only 10 albums, what 10 albums would they be, or whatever? Which ones couldn't you live without? And Dave Geller hit me on this, and I did 32 days, which started as 10 albums, and I'm like, well, I might be able to stretch this out to like 16 to get it to Preakness weekend or whatever. And then I thought, once my mind started working on like the first 45 I had, which was the Beatles Got to Get You Into My Life and Helter Skelter, the Starland Vocal Band Afternoon Delight, and Neil Diamond's, if you know what I mean, and buying records when I was 5 years old and what my mother and father listened to, and Engelbert Humperdinck and Barry Manilow on 8-track, and just sort of all of this stuff, I came to the realization the first concert I went to wasn't Styx in March of 1980. It was Sean Cassidy in February of 78. I'd forgotten about it. So, I went through this whole sort of thing, and I've been going through it all during this COVID of sort of my childhood and my youth and baseball and rock and roll, and I pulled out my Rush belt buckle that my wife got me for Christmas a couple years ago and started wearing it. But the music thing for me, it has been an incredible sort of lily pad, to jump off of after doing nothing in my life but sports professionally since 1984, personally since I got my first baseball card in 1973 or whatever, And to have sports stop for someone that's done sports radio for 30 years, I have found music to be my bunker, man. You know, it is my safe space. It is the thing I do when I vacuum. It's the thing I do when I write. It's the thing I do when I dream. It's the thing I do when I'm on the beach. And I have just really fallen in love with music and taken a little breather from sports. And I'll let you go on that because I've been rambling. But I love having you on because we share this thing with music and sports, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have. I mean, that's one of the things I love about what you got going on and why I always dig doing radio with you, or when we're lucky enough to get together face to face. So I went even further, Nestor. If you go to my Twitter timeline, I'm trying to do 365 days of albums that affected me. Now, I'm not commenting about them.
Just put the cover up.
I did that. So that's been really good because I went through some of the stuff that I listened to earlier, but I interspersed it with stuff that I'm listening to now.
Dude, I saw your UFO stuff. I mean, I see your stuff. Yeah.
Oh, now, UFO is like very early influence, and still super. I'm a big Michael Schenker fan, but
I had Schenker on the show last year. I did like an hour conversation with him. It was awesome, man.
Yeah, he would be a great guy. He's an interesting cat. I mean, you know, he's been up and down. He's gotten in a bunch of tax trouble, but I mean, he had
trouble keeping guys in a band. He's a true solo artist who had trouble, unlike Neil and Getty and Alex, who just figured it out for all of their lives, literally, right? It's hard. It's really hard, right?
No, he struggled. He struggled in the Scorpions. He struggled in UFO, but I mean, and then the other thing that I did was I wanted to see if I could catalog every national act I'd ever seen.
Wow.
And it's been a great thing to go through and try and strain my brain. I think the list is up to about 800, but I mean, there's got to be more. I mean, I know that there's more. I just haven't, all of a sudden it'll dawn on me like, oh yeah, that's right. There was that band that opened up for that one. And so there's a bunch of openers I haven't figured out, but
I have all the ticket stubs, right? So I have that, and I found in my mission to go through all of this. Remember the old like readout paper that would pull through with the little holes in the corner that it attach. In the old News American and the Baltimore Sun, when I worked at the paper in the 80s, I was the music critic from 86 to 92. I had a file that was sort of like a Microsoft Word file at the time, in 1986, where I literally wrote every concert that I attended and the date. And I found the paper printout that, I printed out when I left the paper in 1992, and I still have it in like sort of a pack of stuff in this computer printout in the Xerox, world. And I pulled it out. And so I found all the shows I reviewed. I found all my concert review stuff. But like in the modern era, we don't have ticket stubs anymore, dude, right? I mean, you don't get a piece of paper anymore. It's a little weird.
That's why I put them in a spreadsheet, man. I mean, that sucks. The art of the ticket stub. Like, you should talk to Todd Radom, who's done logos he's done Super Bowl logos. He's done a bunch of MLB logos.
Todd's great. He's been on my show. I love him, man. He's old school.
He's a great guy. And he talks about the art of just the ticket stub. Largely sports, but I mean, there really is. It's a boomer thing, I guess. It's something that that you don't have anymore. You can't go back to your shoebox or whatever it was and go look through and find that stuff. You got to write it down or put it in a spreadsheet now, and it's not nearly as cool. It's like vinyl. The difference between streaming and vinyl, right? Even vinyl and CD. The difference between vinyl was you had that thing, and it was that large art thing, and you sat down with it, and you put the record on, and you opened it up, and you read the liner notes. You read the lyrics, all the credits for the whole thing. That is really something that's been missing, and why it's so great that vinyl has made this resurgence and become part of it. On the sports side, we're never going back to tickets. It's going to be electronic from now, and it's done. So I'm sad about that. It's something that I really miss.
I had one of those Facebook ads pop up literally yesterday because it knows me, it knows you, it knows everything we do, Maury. And it was one of those, those come on ads on Facebook that's sort of illegitimate, but you look at it or whatever with Springsteen's face on a shirt or whatever. This was, believe it or not, a 1,000-piece puzzle of rock and roll ticket stubs, like classic stubs that had been sort of blanketed all together. And I thought, Nestor doesn't wish for much from Santa, but that might be something I would do at the beach with my wife or something like that. And then I thought, man, if I put a blanket of my ticket stubs together, just the old Capitol Center stubs that were red, white, and blue and had this awesomeness to them. And I'm sure the ones in Portland, Oregon, and in the Bay Area where you grew up, and some Bob Graham Presents ticket stub, you know what I mean? Like, I would love that stuff. Something at the Cow Palace with Journey in 1981 or whatever. I long for the days of the Capitol Center and all that stuff. But more than that, my man, I mean, music and sports, you and I have been into that all of our lives, and we're sort of kindred spirits, and you're writing for Forbes, and you're BizBall Maury and trying to steal my baseball team. Maybe one day you'll be successful, take it out to Portland. But through all of this, man, we are into stuff that brings people together, right? Like the worship of baseball on 33rd Street, or the thoughts of football in the parades. And Mike Flynn was kind enough to send me the parade video from 2001 that I was in when the Ravens won the Super Bowl, and I'm in the parade, and I hadn't seen the video in 20 years. It's like bringing people together. Man, if there's anything, like physically getting together with you in Portland and Bernard McKinney and Rob Nair and going out and drinking and eating Asian food and in the town and physically getting together, man, we don't appreciate it enough, right? Like the last 4 months, that Hall & Oates show that I didn't go to the week before COVID, the one where I said to my wife, we'll see him in Philly in May. We didn't see him in Philly in May, Maury, So, the things you passed up on and the things that you're waiting to do again. I mean, dude, I was 10 days out on Pearl Jam in Baltimore at the Royal Farms Arena. And again, in your part of the world, they canceled before anyone. They canceled 2 days before the NBA, and I was like, Eddie Stone, what are you doing? Hell, come on, mate. And they're like, no, man, Seattle's effed up. Your town's next, you know what I mean? And sure enough, it only took 4 days, right? But music and sports and bringing people together, brother, like, we really miss that, right? I mean, we as human beings, we got to have it.
Yeah, and you know what? And it's to transition over to the sports thing. I've never been more intrigued. I don't know if the word excited is. I've never been more intrigued than what I'm about ready to witness on this opening day. I'm going to be one of the fortunate people that will be credentialed to be able to go see this. And I just don't know. I think about it in terms of the history of what's going on. We hate it, right? I hate it. But the idea of sitting in a gigantic, obviously in Baltimore we had the situation, different circumstances, but this one feels entirely different because it affects everybody. And I will, slather myself in Purell and wear the mask and do whatever I got to do to sit in the press box and just be able to sit there, and you should be able to hear everything.
You couldn't Baltimore weird. 5 years ago when they put that fiasco on. It's going to be so bizarre. And so I am intrigued by how I've been close enough to where you can hear a little bits and pieces, right? But I've never been to the point where I imagine you'll be able to hear everything. And we're going to have that. And it will be this weird juxtaposition of having a very fan thing. I mean, sports is largely about our communal thing, and not having that there, and how is that going to feel? And I'm going to try and describe that when I go to it. But it's going to be remarkable, Nestor, this whole period. I think that baseball is going to pull this off. They'll get it started. And I think that they will put a lot of effort into trying keeping it going. I don't know if they finish the season, but they're absolutely going to get it started. You watch. They'll be able to get it going. I don't know how long after they get it going it lasts, but it's going to be something. Maury Brown is a senior contributor at Forbes. He is my rock and roll buddy and guitarist, playing the Malcolm Young role in Shoot the Thrill, an AC/DC tribute band. You can follow him at BizBall Maury, out on Twitter as well as at Forbes for all things the business of sports. And you love NASCAR. You love all sorts of sports. I mean, I follow your journey. You're into different stuff than I'm into. I mean, hey, dude, some people still like professional wrestling. What can I say, right? I have sort of fallen in love with like the Constitution and freedoms and things like that. So I've been working on that as well as my own town. But for where you are and where the world is, give me your life the last 4 months and how much has changed for a guy in a rock and roll band, loving baseball, trying to get up to Seattle out of Portland, Oregon, out where you are. And I followed your journey a little bit out, but watching these greedy MFers in baseball fight over the last 60 days over money again and again and again as my hair gets silver, there's a part of this baseball thing, certainly where I am, Maury, that leaves us a little sort of chilly about all of this. But more than that, there's been the human experience for all of us to say where we were in March, where we are now, and where we're trying to get to. I mean, your band just stopped, man. I mean, it was a big part of what you do, right?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, I mean, you hit on some points about the whole economics of things. Trying to do this, safely and everything that's gone on with it. And it was interesting. Ken Burns was on, I think, CBS Sunday Morning and talking about how baseball has led and, showed Jackie Robinson and everything. So John Thorne, who's MLB's historian, had posted it on his Facebook. And I said I didn't feel the same way. I felt that baseball has largely lost itself as a social institution, that this was a battle over money. There is, of course, health and safety, but it boiled down to arguing over the money about it. And I think that the owners did themselves absolutely zero favors. I think the players hurt themselves in the current labor deal to where they had to fight to not give in on this one because they've got to figure out another one at the end of 2021. But they're not leading. They're not leading, certainly around Black Lives Matter, where I think, they were like, we plan to do this. And it was just the most bland, they didn't really say anything of any significance in their statement. They're not doing anything of substance that I can see. The players are galvanized, and for that, I'm very thankful. It is very, very, I think, healthy to see somebody like Marcus Stroman being so vocal, and it's been largely missing from baseball, not since Jackie Robinson, right? And
when Adam Jones tried to get vocal, right, in the outfield in Boston, right? No, that can't be. And Kurt Schilling, this is not new to baseball, right? I mean, it's certainly not new to any African-American who played the game, right? You go back to Frank Robinson here in Baltimore and the things that I've discovered since I've turned 50, which wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, so I don't feel good about how they handled it. I really don't. I think the bigger concern is the core fans will be there, Nestor. I mean, people like me, man, I'm hooked. There's no way. I'm not going into my 12-step program to walk away from baseball. I will continue to watch it. But from somebody that's an observer of the game and its culture and certainly the business of it and how you grow the game, there's some systemic stuff going on right now that does not bode well for its future growth. We're going to contract about 40 clubs in the minor leagues that remove their affiliation. I understand it. I can rationalize why it's being done. And you just can't place 2,000 players every year. You can't figure out how they're going to do this and get them into the MLB club because, for one thing, you're seeing more of an investment. Analytics are getting better. They're scouting better. You're finding your talent better. So a lot of those guys are never going to have a ghost of a chance of making the majors, and it's a lot of money. At the same token, when you start to do that and walk away from communities, well, that's your long-term growth thing. I do want to see whether a guy makes it. I am interested. I am invested. I don't normally go to a Major League Baseball game. Oh, there's minor league.
Well, and also in that town of Hagerstown, and Maury, over the weekend, I drove through Bowie. I drove through Norfolk. I drove through the Orioles minor league system. I drove back through Salisbury. How about that? So I drove through 3 of their 5 affiliates. They're within 3 hours drive, 4 hours drive of where we live, and I'm thinking, this is where a kid from Norfolk or Newport News becomes a baseball player instead of a basketball or a football player like Alonzo Mourning did or Mike Tomlin or, Allen Iverson. Name any of those people that are from that part of the world. J.R. Reed, Chesapeake, Virginia. I drive through these places and I only know about them because of the ACC and basketball. But this is where baseball gets these players from. You need people to play the sport, right, and to be involved, and younger people, and it just can't be okay for boomers like you and me, right?
No, it's a real problem. Look, and it goes beyond just the fans, right? So the fans in the stands, you make those fans in minor league baseball, they turn into Major League Baseball fans. But it really affects I mean, here we are talking largely about Black Lives Matter and creating opportunities. If baseball cuts back on the number of rounds that they're going to have in the draft, it's already got problems in terms of you're saying, your ability to escalate into the majors is really going to become more difficult as like I said, you seem to scout better and things are going better on the analytics side. Look, I don't blame any person. It doesn't matter the color of your skin, but it doesn't help if you're trying to grow and get more blacks involved in Major League Baseball. If you cut back on the number of of scholarships and the number and your ability to basically move up. I cannot blame one athlete that sits there and goes, you know what? I know that I can get pretty fast. I can make it in the NFL or the NBA and transition and be playing right away. And the odds of me going into Major League Baseball, there's no given that I'm going to make the Major League roster. Well,
we had Hayden Hurst here, right? I mean, Ravens' first-round draft pick. We talk about Lamar. He was the second pick. Hayden Hurst. Now they've moved Hayden Hurst on. They traded him to Atlanta in the offseason. But there's a kid that pitched in the minor leagues for a couple of years for the Pittsburgh Pirates before he decided to go be a football player and make his way in that way. And we've seen others do that. But the pathway in baseball in 1958 or 68 or 78 is a whole lot different than where it's going to be in 2028. And the sport itself, and you said something I want to steal that quote, Maury. I mean, it's so sort of writer friendly. You said baseball has lost its way as a social impact sport. Is that what you said?
Social institution.
Social institution. Okay.
Yeah, no, I honestly believe that. I really do.
Well, it's lost its way in Baltimore, that's for sure. Where I live, where it was an absolute institution, nobody here even knows who the manager of the team is. Literally.
Yeah, but listen, I mean, look, I understand what baseball is. It is a different animal than it was. It is it is a business. Rob Manfred is a pure CEO commissioner. And I will say this too, and to cut Rob some slack here, I'm going to say this. Look, Rob Manfred and Adam Silver and Roger Goodell and Gary Bettman all work for owners. And those owners are about their money and their pocketbooks and everything else. The situation where they had this, I call it, détente or whatever the heck you want to call it, where Tony Clark and Rob Manfred met in Phoenix, which was where the quote-unquote framework for what we got around the economics and eventually now the health and safety and eventually now a schedule was Rob went and pitched what he had. He said, I'm going to do a 60-game deal and blah, 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 and we can make the postseason look like this. And then Tony came back and said, yeah, no. How about 70? And he blew up. Manfred did. And the reason he blew up is because he had a coalition that he could keep at bay. There were really 8 to 9 owners that really just wanted to say, let's just scrap the season.
Well, and I'm thinking my guy here, the Angelos boys, wanted no part of playing a 60-game season where they might go 12-48 for crying out loud.
Yeah, I mean, but beyond that, there was just the money involved with it. I mean, they have Masson. I mean, they're in better position than some others. I mean, if you're the A's, man, you are in trouble. Now, not as much as I think that they're making it out to be. I think that's poppycock. I mean, the bottom line about all that is the owners will lose money. They will lose their revenue streams. They will lose their cash flow for a couple of seasons. There is no denying that whatsoever. But the players and the owners are like this, Nestor. The owners are your home. When you buy your home, the day you buy it, with some it's possible over the life of, 20 years, it may dip down a little bit. But for the most part, your home continues to gain in value. It will appreciate. A player is more like a car. When you buy a car brand new and drive it off the lot, the second it goes off the lot, it starts to depreciate in value. And that's what the player is. The player starts to lose his value largely after he gets out of club control, right, when he hits salary arbitration and his free agency. Though his value begins to drop. And the player life is short. You don't know if you're going to get injured. You don't know whether you're going to be able to play up to, snuff to stay on a roster. There's all of those unknowns. Owners own their clubs. They will appreciate in value. And as long as they hold on to that bad boy, they're going to make money. Now they get they get headwinds here. And the thing that drives me nuts, Nestor, and you can apply this to Major League Baseball, any other sport, you can apply it to the airline industry. when we are in a capitalist system, we are like, yeah, we want capitalism and our profits are amazing and we make money hand over fist. But by golly, the minute there are headwinds, the minute there is any deviation in those profits, we want socialism. We want the players to pick up some of the burden here. And I find that I don't understand how a $10.7 billion industry isn't geared up to handle something like this for 1 year. Look, if it's
they began the war fighting with the veteran players to begin with, right? So, going back to the beginning of this, and, I've talked to John Schuerholz this week, and I've talked to Ken Singleton, and people that were around in the early 70s. Like, I was around collecting baseball cards and reading about Andy Messersmith and listening to my dad bitch about, how Don Baylor and Bobby Grich and Doug DeCinces weren't going to stick around, So, I lived through all of that, and, I would just say for labor problems, it has been the story of baseball. It has been to the detriment of baseball. And now, and my first thoughts about Manfred this week were, when did I first hear of Rob Manfred? Oh, that's right. He was like a barking chihuahua in 1994, showing up in the middle of the strike, yapping, and screaming. And there you are 25 years later, and I can only imagine how much angst is built up for every Adam Jones that has been chased off to Japan or didn't get a veteran contract, or teams that literally, like my team here, that just tank. Guys in the media like you have called it rebuilding. They've rebranded it as rebuilding. If you're a season ticket holder, it's tanking. If you're a fan, it's tanking. When you are trying for 2 and 3 and 4 seasons in a row to stink, it's tanking. It's not rebuilding. It's crossing your fingers, saving money, lying to the fans and saying we're getting younger while we deplete our minor league organization at this point, right? And there's just so many broken promises in all of this. But I'll tell you, this 60-game season thing they're coming up with and the rule changes and all that, like everything else in the world through COVID, Maury, the world's going to change for baseball. And the really weird part is where you sit in Portland wanting a team and us here in Baltimore having a team and having a stadium that's legendary and no one in it, no one who wants to come, and a city that's really down on its luck right now and trying to get better. We're in the last year of release next year. So, the timing of this couldn't be worse for Baltimore as a future baseball city on the back end of the Nationals parading around with a trophy last year and being one of the leaders in the industry in a lot of ways. And just where our franchise is this year, next year, the next 5 years. What does it mean as Brandon Scott is our mayor the next 4 years? Where are the Orioles in 2024, 25, fan-wise, support-wise, business-wise, Masson-wise, Angelos-wise, and where is Major League Baseball? And the whole ship feels rudderless after watching this fiasco the last 90 days. And Maury, I'll tell you one thing, and I've watched this with Republican governor after governor, right, falling in line with the Orange Con man, that once they start this thing, right, once they get this thing going, the Milwaukee Brewers, we got 12 guys tested positive. Well, just cancel the Brewers. Let's just keep the thing going because the Cubs are playing and, they're making money on TV. I could see them losing 5 teams along the way, or the A's just saying, look, we're losing money. Just like the Charlie Finley, Kansas City. We're closing up shop. We're the St. Louis Browns. We're folding for the year. We'll see you next year, guys. See you in the draft. Because I don't know that it's inevitable over 60 games or 60 days or 75 days how they're doing this. I don't see any way they're going to keep these guys healthy. And I would say ditto for football, and I've said that all along. I have flights to Houston and Indianapolis and Foxborough, Maury. You know me, I'm on the road with the football team. I don't really think I'm going anywhere. But, I'll let them have their fantasy that they're going to do this. But baseball, once they start, bro, they're not going to want to stop, right? I mean, once they get 18 games in and a couple teams are dirty and test pot, I worry for that part of it, that they start it and stop it in the way that Arizona shut down now, Florida shut down, Miami shut down. I'm in Maryland. We're not shut down yet, but I got one friend who's going to die this week of COVID, and another one is about to be hospitalized on my timeline. So I know it's here, and I'm worried about the health. I mean, I saw Mike Leake say, I'm not playing, right? I mean, I would think there's a lot of guys out there with $50 million in the bank and a pretty wife and a couple of kids that say, I don't need to do this summer. You and I got to work, Maury. They don't have to work, man.
No. Well, 2/3 of the players earn less than $1 million on the 40-man roster. So there are going to be guys that are going to want to do this. There are some that will say, you know what, if Ryan Zimmerman said he's going to bow out, and he's got some good reasons for it, I think.
Yeah, they all have a little Roger Dorn in them after 30, right?
Yeah. They do. Those guys are in a position. Others are not. I will be interested to see if Mike Trout sticks this thing out. His wife's pregnant. Look, I've got the operations manual. I've been combing through the 101 pages of it and reading it. And largely, I think that it's good. Look, I've been following. I'm writing about American Flat Track, which you mentioned that kind of got my motorsports thing, and IndyCar and Supercross, and I've looked about how they are implementing stuff, and it's entirely different. It's just they've got their own teams. It's an individual sport. It's just very different. And not that there isn't the capacity to have people get sick. But if a mechanic gets sick, you can easily go in there. If a rider gets sick, well, that's one rider. You start to mess with team integrity, and then it's a little bit different. But the manual, I think, is really laid out pretty well. I think that, initially everybody thought that they were really doing overkill. And now, of course, the fact that, you can't have a second wave if you never get out of the first one, right? You start to see this, that it does look like it was wise on baseball's part to kind of be heavy-handed on this. The problem, Nestor, is I don't know if the players can do it. It requires individuals to do this thing. And if we haven't seen one thing in this country, it's that we would rather suffer than make some, minor changes in our lives. And I think that there are just some people that could potentially, one or two of them, that could turn this thing.
Well, I've used the rock and roll, safe sex thing, right? Condom or no condom? Did you or did you not? Be honest with me. I'm not giving you a blood test right now. You know what I'm saying? Just be honest with me. We're on the honor system here, right? And if you always use a condom, you never have to ask the other person, and they never have to ask you because right? So, if you're wearing a mask, you don't have to say, were you wearing a mask or who you? And look, I was in North Carolina last week, and every person without a mask, it really did remind me of safe sex. It reminded me of, oh, I get it. You're not wearing a mask now. You're not wearing a mask yesterday or the day before or ever.
Yep.
I get who you are, and I can't be near you, man. You're far too sloppy out in the clubs for my tastes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they're going to implement, masks starting Wednesday in my state. Everybody indoor. And public spaces that are
good. More people will stay alive, and more Karens will show up at the Whole Foods or whatever. I'm sure.
The issue at hand, though, Nestor, and that's my thing. And I can't blame some people. Hey, man, I took an Uber and I wore a mask, and or somebody didn't. I don't know, but there's just we're not supposed to eat out at restaurants out on the road, and then they're supposed to try and get hotel rooms on the bottom floor so they don't have to take elevators. And there's just this, and there's a million different combinations of ways that they could be exposed. And I just think it's going to happen. Look, the NBA, right, there were 5% of the players that tested pre-going into camp, right? I think it was, I can't remember what it was, 11 of them or whatever it was. Well, I did the math, and it was more like 95 with 1,800. 5% of the 1,800 players, if you took the numbers that the NBA had, and remember, it's a small sample size. It was like 302 players or whatever it was. But if you did that and you took that small sample size and you applied that to Major League Baseball, it was 95. And that's a little bit different. Is 95 a lot? I don't know. At 1,800, it's 5%. Well, we can make this work. We'll do these taxi squads, and we'll go ahead and we'll figure it out, and we'll get players in there. But they're going to absolutely get the season going. That I don't have much doubt about. There might be a lot of tripping going on and moving pieces around, and it may look like nothing we've ever seen. But I worry about once we get going. Once you get to the point to where if I lose, I'll pick on the Yankees. They lose Cole, they start to lose some frontline guys, and then you're starting to begin to wonder about whether the integrity is. Now, look, Cole goes out and pitches normal and blows up his elbow. Well, okay, it would have happened anyway, and that's just part of the sport. But I'm talking about if you start to lose several pieces all at once. And then you start to wonder about, just what are we looking at here? Are we doing this? Are we going through the motions? But I get back to it. And you said it at the outset. Well, it's really hard to put the genie back in the bottle once you get moving. There's that television money starting to flow in. And I think the other thing that will happen here, Nestor, would be if you somehow lost, you lost a city where you couldn't play.
Well, I mean, all of that's on the table. Like, literally, all of that's on the table. Maury Brown's here. He is BizBall. Maury is one of my all-time favorites. You can read him out on Twitter. He's on Facebook and LinkedIn and all those great places, as well as at Forbes. And while the band is on hiatus, I want to bring it back to music because it has been such a joy. But in the beginning of this, my wife is spending 2 nights a week with Garth and Trisha Yearwood, and they're singing love songs and doing, things, and bands are doing things, and my guys from the Bodines and Kurt Newman is doing a song every couple days and putting it up, and everybody's got quarantine songs and whatnot. It really has spoken to people like yourself who are artists and musicians doing this sort of isolated thing. My dear friend Eddie Lauer streaming, on my wife's iPad instead of going over to Fells Point and watching him sing and sidling up, sing a couple songs with him once and again, watching him and watching my dear producer Ray Bachman host his trivia nights twice a week online and driving me nuts, and my wife watching that stuff. But music, and specifically artists doing these, my dear friend Shelby Rassler, maybe you saw it on my Facebook. She's an artist at the Peabody in Boston, put together this symphony that went viral of what the world needs now is love, sweet love. Burt Bacharach. That's my friend's little daughter, who's now 22 in Boston, doing this virtual symphony. There really has been incredible art that has been brought forth through this isolation, right?
And it has. I thought that the one that happened, Dave Grohl did one that was great. There has been that. When you're trapped inside, look, I miss the social aspect. I worry about how this is going to affect us for a very long time. The mental health aspect of this thing is, I think, horrible just in and of itself. You play music. I play music to play to people and entertain them. There's little denying that. And I'm just doing a freaking, a popular, tribute band. But I mean, in and of itself, doing and writing music, all of us have just turned to that. And so I did. I mean, I sat down today and just like, hey, man, just sit down and learn some Jeff Beck. Go and learn some stuff. Do something. Better yourself. To have something, an outlet, is important. I mean, the agoraphobia in this world right now, Nestor, scares the crap out of me. I'm so worried about people who are going to be afraid to come out, even if this thing lifted today, if you could wave a magic wand, there would be people that would be shell-shocked. They just are going to be stuck inside. They won't believe that it's going to be okay for a while. You have to do what you can.
And I'm sure polio was like that in the 50s, right? I mean, literally.
Yeah. And it's funny. I was just talking about this with my wife. I mean, I'm old enough. I know somebody that's 3 years older than I am that had polio.
Wow.
I mean, I'm still friends with her, and it's just an amazing thing. But, I mean, it once again, getting outside when you can is just healthy. Playing music, if you can do it, is healthy. You don't have to be good. Do it to just do it. Listen to music to immerse yourself in something, to get away from your phone, get away from all the angst. Oh, my God, it is so bad right now. And I get sucked into it. You get sucked into it. It is impossible right now. And very much, look, you mentioned I grew up in the 60s and the 70s. I grew up in the Bay Area. Man, we were like the West Coast distributor of freaking politics. And we had the marches in San Francisco. We had the Black Panthers in Oakland. I mean, there was a lot going on. And I think it's healthy. But when it's in your face all the time, I think it just becomes detrimental. And you just got to be able to walk away from it at some point. You have to make the change. You have to do the thing that helps to make the change. But I think that there's just so much noise going on that it just becomes, I think, overwhelming. So getting out and walking around in nature, if you've got it, go to your local park. If you can't go to the woods, whatever, or put a set of headphones on and completely disconnect. And I think that music has always been a healthy thing. It helped me through so many things. And I'm sure that every listener will say, yeah, you know what? There was this moment in my life where things were really crappy, and music helped me get me through that. And I think that that's just super important. So, yeah, I'm glad that it's around. I'm glad that I got an outlet to do that sort of thing. And I think that there are a lot of people that will pick up an instrument now that maybe didn't. and maybe fumble around on it just to, have the
My
flow of
wife
it.
brought the
So-
guitar up. She has been threatening. She's trimmed her nails. She's brought the guitar up. She's threatening to play the guitar and be the lead guitarist in the rock and roll band. We're gonna be like the Partridge Family, Mar. Hey, man, I told you I went on my musical spiritual journey back in April and early May and writing about all these albums, and you can find them all out there at Musicalness. That was the hashtag I used, Musicalness. And the AC/DC thing hit me that I put Back in Black on because Back in Black was one of those albums that was the top 32 that moved me in a direction at that time, and I remember how it came into my life. But it really caused me to think about the first time I ever heard AC/DC. And I was in the parking lot in my stepbrother's Malibu, 1976 Malibu. It was 1980. ZZ Top was on the D'Aguello tour. And I had tickets in the third row. I was 12 years old, and I had never heard of AC/DC. But the windows were down in the parking lot of the Capitol Center. And for the first time, because the word hell was not a word you heard on the radio. Even like Meatloaf, Bat Out of Hell, I'll be gone, gone, gone. They would bleep that out, pre-Tipper Gore. And a lost Democrat, I must say. But nonetheless, I digress. I heard Highway to Hell, and when you're 11 years old, 12 years old in the parking lot at the Capitol Center, you hear Highway to Hell, you don't forget it. But it took me, 40 years. I mean, Rock and Roll Parking Lot was filmed in that parking lot, Maury. I mean, like legendary stuff. But I heard Highway to Hell for the first time in my life in the parking lot at a ZZ Top concert at the Capitol Center. And you wonder why I'm as effed up as I am 40 years later, right?
Yeah, I saw them. I was lucky enough to see them with Bon Scott in '78.
Oh, wow.
They opened up for Aerosmith, and it was transformative. It really was. I'd never seen anything that high energy before.
Wow.
But there is that. I've got a lot of other bands that have left a mark. Every person out there that is a big music fan, a concert goer or somebody that collects vinyl, they will say that there is something that touched them. And the beautiful thing about music is, I think Rod Stewart said this, an interesting concept. I was surprised it was so cerebral. I didn't expect this out of Rod Stewart.
I love Rod.
He said music is an amazing thing because you're taking basically an inanimate object, a piece of plastic, and being able to have this emotion come out of it. And I thought that was really kind of a powerful thing, art in and of itself, right? I mean, painting or whatever it is has this ability to affect you emotionally, good, bad, angry, whatever it is. And I think that's just a super powerful thing. That's why it resonates with so many people. Well, that's why artists, you look at athletes want to be musicians. Musicians want to be athletes. They kind of go hand in hand with each other. And so music, to me, I think is like the healthiest thing in the world that anybody can get into. I know there are people out there go, that death metal stuff is really bad for you, blah, blah, blah. You know what? It's good for me as a guy that, I always need an outlet. I think the best time I ever had in my life was going to see Pantera. I mean, I absolutely lost my mind, Nestor. I completely lost my mind and got it all out of my system. I didn't punch anybody. I didn't do any of that stuff. I just was able to get a bunch of stuff out. And when you're trapped inside, like most people are right now, boy, howdy, is there the need to have a constructive outlet to get these emotions out.
I could use a night with Rod Stewart right now,
Yeah.
Forever young.
But, yeah. I'm interested to see how this next AC/DC album is going to be. I'm hoping that they're in the mix phase, right? They should be done tracking so that all this coronavirus stuff
is that Axl singing? What's going on there?
No, they got Brian Johnson back. So they took tracks for a while there, before the Black Ice album came out, Angus and Malcolm lived together, and they threw down hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of riffs. And so there is this back catalog of songs that Malcolm is on, and they're going to use those. So it'll be an amazing thing. They're going to you'll have Malcolm on these tracks, and then the album is going to be a tribute to Malcolm.
Well, look, if they need him replayed, they can always call you, right? You're on hotline. Fix the parts.
Come on. They've got another young in the family that's a very good guitar player. I think he does a great job. I mean, he's not Malcolm. No one can step in there. But, I'm interested to see how it'll be. They're old. Come on. I mean, it's hard to be relevant at an old age.
You and I are trying.
I think it'll still be good. Hey,
man, you're in my heart. You're in my soul. You got me thinking some Rod Stewart now. So I will depart on this and hope that when we get together, there's at least baseball to talk about, a new AC/DC album, maybe some safety where you are, where your band can go out and do the things that you do and rock out with a little Shoot the Thrill. Always appreciate our conversations and our friendship, Maury, and it's been tough days, but we're all in it together, and we'll talk our way through this and figure it out, right?
We will. And you know what, Nestor? We are going to get back together face-to-face. We'll see if we can get Nair back out. We'll figure out a road trip, whatever it's going to take, but we need to do that. For one thing, my wife wants to meet you. So
I want to meet your wife. I want to meet. I promise you, Portland's on the tour stop the minute I can get out of here, man. I haven't been on an airplane in 5 months. First time since like 18 years old, if that's true. And I don't really think I'm going to be getting on an airplane anytime soon. So
yeah, it looks crazy. You saw the picture of the guy wearing the mask over his eyes yesterday. That was enough.
Yeah, man. Don't need to sit next to Bubba on the plane. I've been there before. Brother, I appreciate you, man. Vote for freedom in November, all right? Appreciate you.
All right, man. You take care.
Maury Brown, one of my all-time favorites. He is BizBall. Maury, he is out at Twitter. I want to tip my cap right now to the Negro League baseball players and everything that everybody out there is doing. I've been to Kansas City. I haven't done that. It's my last baseball piece before the 4th of July, so I'll make sure I do that. And you can find me, nasty at WNST.net, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, all the places that Maury Brown is. Calm, local, and always Baltimore positive. We are WNST.net, AM 1570.